Ask Earl Anything. This is Ask Earl Anything number 22. Today's show, we got a lot of questions. And I always look forward to doing the show. So let's jump right on in to the questions. And the first question comes from JRRM3. And he asked me a question. Have you ever thought about doing the cover of the Van Halen cover Mean Street by Van Halen? It's not too heavy, but has an offbeat bass drum combined with a 16th note hi-hat pattern that I found challenging to learn. I'm wondering if it's just a lack of experience, coordination, or unusual feel. So for your next Ask Earl, do you spend much time doing technical practice, rudiments, stick, foot patterns, and so on, that kind of repetitive stuff that's not so much fun? Best wishes from Australia. Well, JRRM3, my practice routine is what I play, to be honest. So when I sit down, I play. So most of my technique I've built up over 40 years of playing drums. That's the first point. Now, I am going to try a cover of Mean Street at some point. I don't know when it'll be. My cover schedule is going to get a little funky this summer because I have some time off and some things I'm doing. But I will try to fit that in at some point. From what I heard, I was listening to it, it seemed like the pattern was a 16th note pattern. That type of a pattern on the E's and the U's. Now, there's a book called Realistic Rock, and Realistic Rock had a pattern when I was a kid that it looked something like this. It was that was the starting one, and then they had one where it was just the 2 and the 4 without the quarter notes. So how do I work on a pattern like that? Well, first off, it's counting. 1 eanda, 2 eanda, 3 eanda, 4 eanda. And what I'm doing is putting it on the in-betweens, the E's and the U's. So with a 16th note hand pattern, it's 1 eanda, 2 eanda, 3 eanda, 4 eanda, 1 eanda, 2 eanda, 3 eanda, 4 eanda. So I'm counting it, and I'm thinking of playing with my right foot the E's and the U's. Okay, now I did not work up the pattern for Mean Street, but that's how I would work on a pattern that's hard. I would first start working on the 16th note vibe. The first time I ever played a pattern like that was a song called Nights on Broadway by the Bee Gees back in the 70s. I have a live album of that. My sister did, I think. I don't think I bought that album, but I think my sister Gina did, and it had a pattern like so that was one of the first times I ever got that E's and the U's pattern to work. Mean Street's a little bit faster, so anyhow, that's how I would approach it. I would count the 16th notes, and I'd work on the E's and U's. But it all comes from the first pattern I played, which was so I'm playing 8th notes, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and anyhow, that's how I would break it up to learn it. Of course, I learned that pattern a long, long time ago when I was a kid, so now it's like a second nature kind of pattern I pull out of my back of my head. But JRRM3, thanks for the question. Alright, my next question comes from All Classic Drum Covers. Hey Tony, how you doing today? And he said, Question, how often do you break sticks? How do you grip your sticks? See you give example next time. Alright, so let's talk about my stick grip. Another good technical question. Now, most guys hold their sticks between the index finger and the thumb. And they kind of try to get in that first little notch in your index finger. That's how you hold it. But one of the things I've noticed about me and how I hold my stick is that I actually hold the stick a little bit like that, except when I'm playing on a cymbal. And then all of a sudden I notice my fingers going like this. And where I'm really holding my stick these days is somewhere between that finger and the middle finger. And a lot of times it is the middle finger that's actually on the stick. And I do the same in my left hand, the same thing. Now if you notice in my left hand, I usually hold the stick with the back end of the stick. Now I may start with it this way. But truthfully, sometimes it ends up being that. If you watch any of my videos and you see my finger moving up like that, that's really where I'm getting it, is there. Now I also use this technique to kind of get some finger control out of the stick. So I'll be holding on to it with the index finger and I'll actually pull the middle finger back on the stick to get some... that kind of thing. Be easier if I tightened it up, I think, probably. But now the other thing is, do I turn my hand over? Do I not turn my hand over? I've done a lot of study on this grip thing because I've been teaching some students, and when I teach students, they want to know how do you hold the stick the right way. So I start them the traditional way. Start them that way, but I realize I sometimes play French grip. I don't always play German grip, that's for sure. I believe this is German. A lot of times when I'm holding the stick, I'm actually controlling it with the fingers, and my middle finger has a lot to do with that. The only thing I can tell you about holding the sticks, Tony, that really is helpful is to make sure that when you hold the sticks, you hold them loose. And this is why... This is why if you hold the sticks loose, you drop sticks occasionally. So I have a tendency to use, I've shown this stick before, the sticks with the bulb sometimes because it helps me hold on the sticks better. Okay, but I don't have a lot of these left because this company went out of business. But usually I think my hand is mostly up over with the thumb on top more than this way. But if I'm playing a snare drum piece, you may see my hands like this, but when I play cymbals, I usually turn the hand over to play the cymbals. On a hi-hat, I may play it over. So I'm not the best guy to look at for technique, but I have a technique that works for me, and that's what I've kind of learned. So the key here is to use a technique that works for you. Now, I play traditional occasionally. Sometimes you'll see me with the left hand, mostly on jazz stuff. But work on the grip that works for you. I'll tell you a good DVD to watch if you want to watch hand technique. Of course, Dave Weckle's Back to Basic was a good one. He showed some great stuff there. The new Steve Smith, if you're a match grip player, he's got a whole video DVD series on playing match grip. So, next question comes from Stickboy YT. All right, great job. Quick question: have you ever heard of the Lemon Twigs? If so, what do you think of their drummer? The one that looks like Keith Moon. Well, I never heard of Lemon Twigs. I went and watched some video. I sent a question to my son. He thought it sounded pretty cool. He definitely has a Keith Moon look and vibe a little bit too, to be honest. I think he's a good drummer. The band sounds really cool. Sounds like a cool band. They've got more of a 60s kind of vibe to them. And I could see that they might have some really cool music to listen to. The interesting thing is there's so much great music out there today. And if you can find a pocket of great music, you try to jump on it and listen to it. And the way I learn new music is when my son-in-law or my son or my grandkids or somebody passes on the name of something great to me, and then I will listen to it. But yeah, the Lemon Twigs seemed like a cool band. He looked like a decent drummer. Definitely looked like a really good drummer. So great pick there. And their music's kind of poppy, 60s kind of vibe, but not poppy like overdone techno. So, and I've only watched a little bit of it, so I'm not an expert on their music at all. But thanks for sending it to me, Stick Boy. All right, the next one is from Rich Raw Dog. By the way, Rich Raw Dog gave me this Drum Man 190 bag a while ago. I think all my shakers are in the bag now, so I got like a shake bag. Alright, cool. I hit the gong for that one. Actually, the gong has to be hit with this. There we go. Got the gong in the show again. You guys love the gong. I love it too. Alright, Rich. Rich asked this question. Oh, matter of fact, Rich, in the beginning of the question, great show, Earl. I love the gong. Next time, when playing gigs with other bands, do you mind using other sets, or do you always bring your own? Rich, that is a great question. Now, I will tell you, when I was younger, I liked playing on my own kit. I really did like playing on my own kit. But as life went on, and time went on, and carrying gear became heavier and heavier and heavier, I really appreciated when I started playing churches around here when the churches had kits. But even then, I would still bring a snare drum and all my cymbals and my sticks, my pedal. I have gotten to the point now where I play at a place, and if they say they've got drums, I will usually, the first time I go there, I will bring my sticks, my snare, and my cymbals. I won't even mess with the pedal. And if I go there and I find out they got decent cymbals and decent snare, I won't even bring that the second time. I'll just play it. Now, if I hate the cymbals and the snare, I will always bring a snare and cymbals. So the first time you go on a gig, it's always good to have cymbal, snares, and your own sticks. And if you're really a pedal nut, bring a pedal with you. One time, I had a good friend of mine asked me to play at his church. He actually left his great Yamaha Recording Custom drum kit set up for me. And when I got there, his pedal was so messed up for my foot, I couldn't deal with it. But I had thrown in my Camco pedal in the back of the car. And that was, I don't normally do that, so it was just kind of an oddball thing, because I didn't really want to go tearing up his pedal and messing with his tension. I find that's a really tough thing to do. But I will tell you, if I'm playing in a church and the pedal's bad, I will fix it. I'm the guy that will fix stuff, I will move stuff, I will tune stuff, and I will work with what I have. Now, that's the disadvantage of using the house kit. You never know what you're going to get, and you never know what's going to happen to you in those situations. So you have to be able to deal with it. And if you're a guy that wants things where you want things, you want sounds to sound the way you want them to sound, that's when it becomes a problem. But I've learned that I'd rather not break my back and carry a few cymbals and a nice snare drum to a gig. I can usually make any set of toms work for me somehow. Even though I did do a recording session once, and this was, I didn't have a choice. I had to use the kit in the studio. The guy had the worst, he had a great Ludwig kit, but he destroyed it by sticking fiberglass insulation in the toms, touching the heads. There was actually fiberglass insulation like kind of mounted in the shell, and they sounded like Kill It. And I was doing a jazz tune. So the tom sounded like that. And he said, here's the other option, I could put up the Roland pads for you. And this was not the Roland V-drum pads. This was the original triangle shaped Roland pads. So I had a hard surface, or I had this. I played the whole thing on cymbals and snare. I didn't touch a tom the whole time. It was all brushes anyhow, so it didn't matter. I found my way around it. So that is the disadvantage. So I will tell you that, Rich. All right. The next question. The next question comes from Jared. I'm not even going to try O-Y. I'm going to call him O-Y. Jared O-Y. I'm not going to even try your last name, Jared. It's a really cool last name. I just don't want to butcher it. He said, I'm looking for a way to improve my mix. Based on your experience in the studio, what is your best microphone placement when recording with overheads, snare, and kick? Okay, now I'm sitting at the Rototom kit. I've actually upgraded it from the last segment. I put the Rototom kit on the rack, and it kind of works. But I will bring something into camera view, I hope. Standing up, now you can see me. I don't know if you can see this or not, but this is a, right here, and I think this might be in the shot, is a clip for a mic. A large diaphragm condenser mic. And when I had the Jazz kit set here, I was putting a large diaphragm condenser mic over here, and I was putting another mic equidistant from the snare drum off to the side of the floor tom. I believe they call this the, I don't know if it was Eddie Kramer who made this famous. It's a technique. It's a technique, and I'll try to find. I was going to do it before I got on here, but I decided to fly this. You know, it's lunchtime, and I'm trying to get this done in my lunch hour. So, but there's a technique for this. I'll try to put it in the crawl later. But that's a technique when you have just a kick, a snare, and overheads. If you want to get a wide stereo image, this is the technique to use. This will get you the wide stereo image. So you'll get the toms, the kick. But the key thing here is, from your snare, you have to have the same distance to this, to the mic over here. They have to be the exact same distance. So the way I do it a lot of times is I'll have the mic right there, and I'll put my sticks together, and I'll put it on the snare drum, spot on the snare drum. They say do center, doesn't really matter that much, gets close enough, so that's up to the top. I come over here, and bring it down, and then I say this is where I want to put my mic. And that tells me where it's going to be. Usually there wouldn't be a cymbal here, I wouldn't put it where the cymbal would be. But you get the idea, and that's one way of getting a different spaced pair. Now, if you're using overhead microphones, and I'm going to lose the camera in a second, the thing I will tell you about overhead microphones you need to know is that if you're going to use spaced pair, it has to have that same equidistance from the spaced pair. So another way to do it is take a mic cable or a yardstick. Okay, you take, or a measuring tape, you tape it off. If it's 41 inches, you go 41 inches. You go 41 inches. That gets you the equidistance, and to get you the, what they call not letting the overheads be out of phase. The best way to not have overheads out of phase is to do what they call coincident miking. And coincident miking means you're going to put the capsules like this at a 90, I believe it's a 90-degree angle is what, I think that's 90 degrees, yeah. It ends up being a 90-degree angle. It comes at a sideway like this from each other. Okay, sometimes you go past it and then it's 110 out. But that's another way of doing it. Realize this mic will be going to this side of the kit, and this mic will be going to that side of the kit. So when you put it into your interface, you need to remember that. And that's how I mic my regular kit most times, is coincident miking. But if you're using 4 mics, this is a really cool technique. I forget what they call it though. I just know how to do it. I'll put it in the crawl. Alright. We're calling this Speed Ask Earl Anything. Okay. The next question, I have a lot of questions. The next question is from Drumman 190. Drumman 190. One of my favorite guys in the community. That's the use of this bag. Rich Raw Dog. How to do that again. Alright, Drumman 190. He said, will you make a cover behind the kit you're at? My plan, Drumman, is to play a cover on this Rototom kit. I'm just trying to find the right song. Believe it or not, the right song for this is the hardest thing to do. So I haven't found the right song, but when I do, I promise you I will do one on this kit. And he also asked, would I consider doing a Green Day cover? Yes, I'm considering doing a Green Day cover. I just saw Steve Cox do a Green Day cover today. I don't know, it was Boulevard of Dreams or something. It's a punk tune, you know. I can do a punk tune. I know I can do a punk tune. I'll have to do a Green Day cover to show you guys. But I have to strip the kit back a little bit, go to like 2 cymbals or something stupid, you know. So I'll eventually get to that, but I haven't got to it yet. Again, my cover schedule's a little weird right now. Alright, next question is from Robert Gatsu. G-A-T-T-U-S-O. Gatsu, I think that's right. He asks, any suggestions on how to get around the kit and speed techniques? Thank you. Alright, techniques around the kit. Well, first off, sitting in a drum kit and playing around the kit is the first way to start working on speed. The other thing is a metronome, number 2. If you need patterns, there used to be a book called Get Your Fills Together. It actually wrote fills out. That was not how I did it. I would take a book like Syncopation, okay? And Syncopation has got exercises with 16th notes, or accents and rebounds, or even stick control, any of those types of books. But Syncopation has got an accent page where they actually got accents on one of the pages. And what I would do is just use the accent as being where I was going to move my stick. So that's one technique for working on different patterns. Okay? But to be honest, it's been years since I've worked on patterns. The only time I ever work out a pattern is when I really want to learn something kind of cool. And if I want to learn something kind of cool that I have to work on, I will work it up, you know. And I'll sit there with the thing and like the GAD thing, or oh, I can't even do that. I'm gonna have to cut this. This is a pattern I learned off an Omar Hakim thing. Anyhow, a friend of mine showed me that pattern, and I just started goofing around with it. So that's how, sometimes when I want to learn something, I will work it up. But I have to really want to learn it. And I think the last time I really wanted to learn a pattern was that pattern, and I think it was like 1993. So I really don't spend a lot of time working on patterns, do I? Anyhow, if you're going to work on patterns, take a 4-piece kit or a 5-piece kit and start breaking your hands up. You know, I don't really sit here doing a lot of that, but if I was going to do it, that's how I would work on things. And I'd put a metronome on with a click, and that was another fill I worked on in 1994, I think. It was like a 5-stroke fill. I actually heard Chris McHugh play that lick on some really obscure Christian record. Great fill though, I use it all the time too. It's one of those ones that where I worked up. Again, you start slow, like anything, like this pattern. And you work yourself around it. Once you get the pattern, you throw it in different places. Anyhow, don't know if I answered that question. I don't know if I'll use any of that. But it was fun to play it anyhow. Alright. I'm not really the guy to ask for technique. I gotta be honest, Robert. I am not the guy to ask for technique. I don't spend the time that you guys do. Some of you guys really spend the time. Of course, when you're 57 and you've been playing for 40-something years, you don't spend the time unless you have to learn something to make it work. The next question is from AG Drummer. And AG Drummer says, my question for you is, Are you a fan of Turkish companies? Istanbul, Agap, Mehet, Bosphorus, Drill, Murat Drill, Masterworks, etc. Symbol offerings. I have a few amazing crashes and rides from a couple of the aforementioned companies. I just love them. Thanks, Earl. Keep on rocking. To answer the question is, I'm a fan of cymbals. And when I hear great cymbals, I love to play them. Now, cymbals are an investment and they cost a lot of money. So let me just say something about these Turkish companies. The Turkish thing started in the 90s and really picked up in the 2000s. And I have a couple friends that had Soul Tone endorsements. And when they told me about their endorsements and they told me about what they were paying, and they're supposedly getting this discounted price, the price almost was a couple dollars cheaper than Zildjian's or Sabian's at the time. So I thought to myself, is this really a great deal? Plus, you can't go try them out anywhere. The advantage of buying a company you can go and try it out in a store is you could actually, listen to the cymbals. So when you're buying Soul Tone cymbals as an endorser online, you're basically going down the line, and if it looked cool, you might want to grab it. But once you bought it, and they would personalize it, they put your name on it, so now it was yours because your name was on it. And anyhow, the deal didn't seem that great to me. But I would say this, if you can try the cymbal out and it is something that you like and you love, then it's awesome. If you're just buying it online and you can't try it, that's a problem. Now, Istanbul's different. Istanbul was Istanbul's actually the fifth cymbal company, I call it. The first cymbal company we all know is to be Zildjian. When I was a kid, Zildjian was number one, Paiste was number two. By 1982, Zildjian and Paiste were still in the marketplace and Sabian showed up. And less than a couple years after that, Istanbul showed up. And so did Meinel. And when Meinel showed up, it was a German company. It was mostly B8 cymbals like Paiste, but they didn't do them as good as Paiste. And Meinel's really come up in the ranks of cymbal companies. Istanbul came out of the old K Zildjian factory line, okay? And the guys who ran Istanbul, Mehet being one of the owners and the other one being Agap. Well, Mehet and Agap were the first Istanbul. What happened was Agap, the dad, I forget his first name, Agap, he passed away. And he left it to the kids. And when the kids got it, they split the business up from Mehet. So Mehet took the Mehet Istanbul, and Agap was the kids. They took the Agap Istanbul. And there was a lot of wrangling about that whole thing. What ended up getting spawned out of that was, by the end of the 90s, when they finally had Mehet and Agap, there was a bunch of guys that knew how to make these cymbals that worked in those factories that started making them for other people. Okay? And then they started making them for Bosphorus, and then they started making them for Crescent, and they were made in Turkey. And they made them for Soul Tone, and then they made them for Drill, And the truth of the matter is, the other cymbal company that nobody really talks about is Wuhan. They were always there, by the way. Wuhan is the China people, the gong people, okay? And Wuhan, China is where they were made. That's why they were called Wuhans. And you would only get Wuhans if somebody came back from China in the 70s, but by the 80s they started to come in. They were coming in. In certain places you could buy Wuhans. But the Chinese cymbals have a different B20 alloy. It's hammered differently. It's ideal for gongs. It's become an interesting sound now for cymbals, and the Dream cymbals, this is a Dream gong, the Dream cymbals are one of the cymbals a lot of guys like to play. But they come from the China side. Back to the Turkish side. The Turkish cymbals are all made by these guys that used to work in this Istanbul factory somewhere. They all kind of learned the secret and they started popping these things off. So what you're getting, though, is really the secret formula of Zildjian. That's what you're getting. Because the Zildjian formula passed down to Advatis Zildjian and to Karop Zildjian. Okay, that was the K Zildjian. The Ks were made in Istanbul or Constantinople. They were made in Turkey. And the A's were made by Advatis Zildjian in the United States. And the two didn't come together till the 70s. When what happened was Avidus bought the K line from Gretsch, who owned them. And when that happened, he brought the makers of those cymbals over to Canada and put them in the current Sabian factory. And they made the first Canadian K cymbals. So this heritage of Turkish cymbals really comes through Zildjian. That's where it comes through. The reason we have a Sabian is because the Zildjian brothers, Armand and Robert Zildjian, couldn't get along, and they split the business up when Dad died. Now Sabian's the biggest cymbal company in the world. They're split up. The kids own the cymbal company again. Armand's daughters own the Zildjian company, and the Sabian company is owned by Billy Zildjian. Okay? And Billy is the BI in Sabian. Okay, that's how they made it. Sabian was Billy, was Sally, Sabian, S-A-B-I-A-N. Sally, Billy, and Andy. That's how they came up with it. Those were the three kids of the Robert Zildjian. So, all the Turkish cymbals are all made in the old Zildjian style. Are they good? If you find something you like, they're great. That's the bottom line to the whole thing. For me, I've spent so much money buying the major brands for all these years. I'm just happy to have a set of Paistis, a set of Zildjians, and a set of Sabians. And I have some Istanbuls, and I have Istanbul Mehets. I don't have any Agaps. But I've got a Mel Lewis Mehet cymbal that not many guys have, because Mehet wasn't supposed to make the Mel Lewis name under the signature. That was only supposed to be under the first Istanbul name, and then Agap bought the name. So I've got one of the early versions of Mel Lewis cymbal that was made by Mehet, and then they were told to cease and desist, and they couldn't sell them anymore. So they became the jazz cymbal or something, I forget what they call them. But anyhow, that's the story of Turkish cymbals. I would say, if you're getting an endorsement by one of these companies, like Soultone, I don't see how great that is. But it all depends on the deal you get and everything else. And if you love the cymbals, they're great. It sounds like you love these cymbals, so you should keep on doing it. All right, this question's from 2112 Drums. And 2112 Drums says, have you ever struck a deal on a piece of drum gear? I've heard of Ludwig Acrylights out of the trash pile and the Superphonic for $9 at Salvation Army. That kind of deal. I've had some very interesting deals. Now, I will say what's really come to me in my life is I've actually had drum kits just dropped on my lap. And that's really a major been a blessing in my life. I've had a couple friends give me drums and cymbals out of their collection. One of the best things that ever got dropped on me one day was I was playing at this church for years, and we left the church. But right before we left the church, we bought a drum kit from my good buddy from high school, Bill McCabe, which was a Ludwig Marine Pearl kit, 13 10x14, 16x16, 24-inch bass drum, 6, 8, 10, 12 concert toms, some Paisti cymbals, and all kinds of stuff. Anyhow, I left the church 6 months later. The drums sat there collecting dust. The pastor left a year or two after that. And then one day, my friend, who was one of the deacons at the church, calls me up and says, hey, the new pastor's going to throw these drums to the curb. I said, don't do that. I'll call the guy up who used to play them, see if he wants them. And I'll never forget getting that phone call. I was like, okay, I'll be there tomorrow. Don't do anything. I'll come tomorrow after work. I'll stop right there and pick them up. And I got this beautiful 60s Ludwig kit with the 24-inch bass drum and 13, 10x14, 16x16 floor tom. It had a weird snare drum on it, a wooden snare. It had the concert toms. It had cymbals. I took them all. I had all that stuff for a while. Then I eventually sold it off, which is totally, that was probably my best find of all time, probably. I guess when I was in college, I bought a 20-inch bass drum and a 8x12-inch Gretsch tom from a guy. One was white swirl and the other one was blue swirl. And that Gretsch tom is on my little Gretsch kit now, that little 12-inch tom. So whenever you see the maple 12-inch tom, that was once a tom I bought in college off a guy for 10 bucks or 15 bucks. So that was a round badge Gretsch drum, which has gone the gamut from being to me, given to my friend Scott, given back to me, given back to my friend Scott, and now it's come back to me to live. So I've got lots of stories like that, lots of strange little stories like that. But I've had friends take a super sensitive snare drum that had a broken snare strainer and just gave me the drum, and then I fixed it. You know, so I mean, I've been blessed with a lot of that kind of stuff in my life. You know, I've had some beautiful kits. One of my favorites was a Blue Sparkle Club Day kit my friend Alan Levine gave me, which I gave to a church. So I eventually passed things on too. But I've had a lot of stuff given to me more than me finding and buying those things. I do look in the garbage cans though, 2112. I do, a lot of times. Alright, great question. Sherry Gemerick asked a question. She said, out of curiosity, who did you play with, who are the bands you played with when you were younger? Okay. Well, I did a lot of my own band. I had my own wedding band, and I played with a lot of corporate gigs in New Jersey, New York, New Jersey area in the 80s and 90s. I did a lot of different bands I would play freelancing with. Christian bands, I played in a band called Saved by Grace. We did a record in Nashville. And I played with another duo called Will and Ray. Will Comstock and Ray Gilio. And I was their backing drummer for a while, and we became the band Water that played at Creation Fest in 1990. That never really went anywhere. Those were original bands I played in. I played with a lot of guys, though, that played on the Asbury Park, New Jersey circuit. So I played with guys that were in the Asbury Jukes, the Blackberry Blues Band, String Bean and the Stalkers. A lot of these guys were the guys down in the shore that were the great players back in the 70s and 80s, and I ended up playing with them in the 90s before I moved to Florida. So in my 30s I was playing with a lot of those guys. Once I got here to Florida, I've played with some pretty famous worship leaders. I've played with Danny Daniels from the Vineyard Worship Movement. I've played with a couple guys that have been on TBN. I'm not going to go into their names. I played with a guy I used to play in Mylon Lefevre and Broken Heart. His name is Michael Terrell. He's a guitar player. And he's a good friend. Even though I haven't seen him in years, but we keep up on Facebook and other places. But he played on my wife's album. Amazing guitar player. Amazing guitar player. So I was blessed to play with him for a couple of years. Doing gigs in town and some other places. Most of my stuff was Christian music. I did a lot of Christian music, so I played in those circles for years. But that was it. You know, the Jersey Shore thing, we all have some 6 steps to Bruce Springsteen somewhere. You know, I've worked with people that are 6 steps to Bruce Springsteen. The other guy I've worked with in the Christian realm was a guy named Mike Dacey. And Mike Dacey was one of the guys in the Wrecking Crew in the 60s. He played on the Association's records. He played with Elvis Presley. He played with Frank Sinatra. He played on a lot of movie soundtracks, like Clint Eastwood soundtracks. He came to the Lord and ended up playing on, he produced Bullfrogs and Butterflies by Barry McGuire, which was a huge album in the late 70s, early 80s. Played with Second Chapter Vax, and I got to tour with him a bunch in the early 90s. So he was a pretty famous guy too that I played with, that had some creds. A lot of creds, actually. He almost brought Joe Osborne on tour with us. I was so wanting Joe Osborne to be there. I would love to have played with Joe Osborne, the bass player. That would have been amazing. Okay, so that's the answer to that, Sherry. And I got one more question. And it's 2112 again. He slipped another one in. I didn't even know it. Alright. For the next Ask Earl Anything, I don't know how to ask this, but how do you sort of advertise your channel to new people? Or does it just happen? Or in other words, How do you reach out to people to tune into your channel? 2112, that is a great question. And I will say that there's no magic formula here. I mean, if you want to pay for advertising, you can pay for advertising. One of the things I've learned in this last week with all the drama in the drum community is that there's a way through Google you can buy ads and get people to look at it. And that's completely legal in Google's mind if you want to get people to come to your channel. But spending money to get people to come to a YouTube channel that is not monetized, and you're not making any money off it, doesn't make any sense to me. When I do drum covers, it's not monetized. But how did I grow my channel? It was through the drum community. It was guys like Drum Covers by Bill, Drumman 190, doing some drum battles, getting featured on their shows. And the other thing I did, which I think is really the key to getting pushed into the YouTube queue, so to speak, is you've got to be doing consistent covers. Meaning they want to see 5 drum covers. They want to see 5 videos a week. So if you want to get on YouTube and do this and get picked up, you've got to put output out. And output means videos. So one of the things I try to do is lots of videos each week. Okay? And if you can't do drum covers, then do other videos. Talk about equipment. I see that's what you do, 2112. You talk about your cymbals, you talk about restoring a drum kit, and there's some cool stuff there. So make your presence there and get people to pick it up. But I will tell you, the drum community picks up on the drum covers. So if you want to promote your drum covers and get seen by other drummers, you go to All Classic Drum Covers or Drum On in Facebook, and you plop your video in these. You join those communities and you plop your video in there, or Drummer's Den, Michael Perry's group. So those are 3 other places you can put your videos that's outside of the YouTube churn. Alright? The other thing I do is Instagram, and I will say Instagram will get you some people looking at your channel. Make sure you promote your channel in your Instagram welcome. Anyhow, that's it. Anyhow, that's it for Ask Earl Anything. I hope this show is great. Hope you guys watch it. Hope soon YouTube will let me monetize this show. That's my goal. I have a lot more talking shows coming down the pike. I'm working on some things, some new ideas, some interviews and other things, but I'm waiting to get monetized. And I should get monetized soon. As soon as I'm monetized, I will start opening that floodgate. Till then, you'll see more drum covers. Please like, please subscribe. Thanks for watching my show. Have a great day. Bye.